Some looked as though they had been running, others seemed to have been skipping. Some sat, and some stood. There were frozen smiles and frozen frowns, and there, right at the front, gazing out from his icy prison, was Ivan's brother. Starjik laughed cruelly. "Such pretty children," he said, "and mine forever." Ivan looked into the twisted face, and his eyes were filled with tears. "But these children do not move," he cried. "You cannot play with them or hear them laugh. You could make such children from painted wood." Starjik shook his head. "Ah, no, the finest woodcarver could not do that. And besides, I take the children to punish those who sent me away." He laughed again. "Once I was a child like these," he said, "but the other children would not play with me. They said my heart was cold, and they sent me away." He turned to the ice prison, resting his hands on it, looking in. "Now I have friends, and everyone a pretty one, for I have chosen them myself." He turned, smiling coldly down at Ivan. "You also are a pretty child," he hissed. "You would not be out of place in my collection. You would not be out of place at all. They are happy, you know, with me, for they have forgotten their homes, and now it is time for you to join them." He reached up and snapped an icicle from the curtain. Ivan backed away. Starjik laughed. "It is no use, Ivan. You cannot escape. I have only to touch you with this icicle, and you are mine forever." Ivan felt the ice prison at his back. He could go no further. Starjik grinned and came on. The icicle held out before him. Ivan bit his lip. The ice point was inches from his head. As Starjik stooped for the final lunge, the boy whipped off his mitten and flung the ice pips into the evil face. His voice echoed shrill through the cavern. "Brothers nevermore shall part. Melt the winter in his heart." At once, there came a rumbling sound, and the cavern floor quivered. Starjik staggered back. With an awful cry, his hands clawing at his face, Ivan was flung to the floor. Behind him, the ice prison heaved, split, and shivered into fragments. He scrambled at the slippery floor, trying to get up. Then something struck him on the head, and he felt himself falling. After a long time, Ivan opened his eyes and cried out. Starjik was bending over him. He rolled away, trying to get up. Starjik watched him. Ivan scrambled to his feet and backed off, eyeing the old man warily. Starjik made no attempt to follow, but stood, gazing at him across the shattered ice. Then the corner of his mouth twitched, so that he seemed almost to smile. Ivan screwed up his eyes, shook his head, and looked again. Starjik was smiling. There was no cruelty now in his smile. There was something in his hand, and he held it out towards Ivan. "Soup," he said. "Hot soup." Ivan took a step forward. Something grabbed at his waist and clung there very tightly. He looked down and saw his brother's head pressed against him. All around, children were awakening, rubbing their eyes and gazing about them. Starjik came closer, offering the soup. He seemed straighter now, less twisted. Ivan took the bowl and backed away, drinking the hot soup and watching Starjik through the steam. "There are furs," said Starjik, "in my storeroom. Many furs. I will fetch them."
He shuffled away through the splintered ice. Ivan gazed after him, wonderingly passing the soup bowl to his brother. Starjik went several times back and forth with his shuffling gait until a heap of warm furs lay on the floor. "You ought to be going," he said. "There is no wind now, and you have a long journey." And he began to go round from child to child, wrapping the furs about their shoulders, smiling. And when they began to move out through the passage in twos, holding hands behind Ivan, Starjik led the way. There was no wind and no fluttering things now in the quiet darkness. And they came at last to the end of the cave, where their eyes danced to see the snowflakes falling through the pure light. "You will never see me again," said Starjik, "but I shall see you. And when winter comes again, you will have reason to remember how Starjik's heart was warmed." And so they left Starjik's land, and Ivan took them home. And at every village he strode along the street, crying, "Here are your children, home again, from far away." And the people cheered and brought food and heaped gifts upon them, and stood waving as the line of children marched away. With each village the line became a little shorter, until at last only Ivan and his brother were left. And so they came home, and the fear melted in the hearts of the people, and they were happy. And when winter came again, Starjik remembered his promise. No one heard him come, for the howling wolves were gone, and his sled was pulled now by silent deer. But when the people woke at dawn, there were sled tracks in the snow, and shining gifts by all the children's beds.